What's up, Hoopers? Welcome to Triple Threat. We are coming to you live at 12 p.m. Eastern. Normally we're on at 1, but we are 24 hours away from the craziest day in the NBA calendar, the NBA trade deadline. Now, it already kind of started off with a bang. In case you have been under a rock, Luka is no longer a Dallas Maverick. He is now a Los Angeles Laker. And to just put into perspective how mind-boggling this is, because I know we have people who watch this show who aren't avid basketball fans. They're just getting into the sport. Let me just explain to you how crazy this is, okay? I was coming back from Richmond. I had a 6 a.m. flight out of Richmond, and I fell asleep to one of the many news programs. And I woke up around 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'm hearing this, and I'm like, there's no way that Luka got traded. Like, the Dallas Mavericks are not that insane. Well, they actually are that insane, and it has sent shockwaves through the NBA community. And now a lot of NBA stars are like, well, if Luka's not safe, I'm not safe. And one of those stars is Devin Booker. Listen to this.
The thing is obviously the big trade. Just your reaction to seeing that.
It's crazy, man. You know, I really don't know what to say about it. You know, Luka being a guy that, you know, everybody's claimed is untouchable and untradeable, and, you know, the NBA shows you again.
Right.
Just can't predict it. You know, it's a business. They're always having a conversation about you. You know, so you know, don't think you're safe at any point.
Do you feel like the shift in power or balance or anything in the West?
I mean, you have to let it play out.
I said no.
You know, they have to build chemistry on both sides. So, you know, I'm interested to see how it turns out. I'm sure the world is too. So, you know, building the business.
That is how monumental this trade was, that you have Devin Booker, who has been with the Phoenix Suns his entire career, saying, well, if Luka can get traded, anybody can get traded. CJ McCollum, my guy, put out a tweet and basically said, look, I'm just going to keep my bags packed until after the trade deadline because apparently nobody is safe. And Luka was shocked, just like the rest of us. And he was not aware of the fact that he was being traded. He put out a letter thanking the Dallas Mavericks organization and the fans, and basically said he thought he'd spend his entire career in Dallas, and he so badly wanted to bring a championship to the city. Look, I'm going to say this. I've been advocating for athletes my entire career, and this just proves once again that athletes need to put themselves first. They need to prioritize their business, their careers, their livelihoods over the organizations in which they play for, because I know that organizations like to preach loyalty and like to preach this and like to preach that, but at the end of the day, they are disposable, because if you can trade Luka, you can trade anybody. And if you don't believe me that there's no loyalty in this game, ask Damian Lillard if he's in Miami right now. Look, we will be right back after this quick break. We have a jam-packed show. I have Evan Turner in the studio. Brad Bakken will be joining us in just a little bit. We're going to dive into some breaking news right after this break, so you're not going to want to move. No. Welcome back to Triple Threat, and as promised, I am joined by Evan Turner. Brad Bakken will be pulling up in just a little bit, but we have to dive into some breaking news. I'm talking about an hour ago breaking. A trade has gone down. Chris Middleton and the Milwaukee Bucks, and let's redo this. Hold on a second. The Milwaukee Bucks are trading Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, and a pick swap to the Washington Wizards for Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Baldwin, and a second-round draft compensation. Now, as we know, there were reports that Kyle Kuzma wanted out of the Washington Wizards, and we've been hearing this, Evan, I feel like for a little bit. It was first the Lakers, and then it could have been Houston, and he ended up staying with the Wizards, who have just been absolutely abysmal abysmal this season. But Chris Middleton, if you talk about that situation in Milwaukee, he's 30 plus years old. He's had injuries on both of his ankles. He's been rehabbing both of those ankles, and he just hasn't been 100% himself. What do you make of this trade? They're trying to advertise it as the big three in Milwaukee.
No, I kind of like the trade. I think one thing that occurs that Kuzma gets is a lot of negativity, but he's a big size wing that can score, shoot the ball, switch and defend. But most importantly, he has championship experience, and that's something that you can't take for granted. I'm a big fan of Chris Middleton, but those injuries have slowed him down. This isn't 2021, 2022 anymore.
Right.
And when it's coming down to win now, especially when you're worried about, keeping Giannis or even, the tide of, your chances to win a championship, I think this gives him a little bit of energy. And even getting Patrick Baldwin Jr. as like a young talent moving forward is a big deal as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. If you're Chris Middleton, you just got sent to Siberia, essentially, because the Wizards are 8-41. They're last in the Eastern Conference. The Bucks, though, are interesting, right? 26-22 right now. They're sitting at 5th in the Eastern Conference. When you look at the East, though, I feel like seeds 1 through 3 are kind of set. They may move a little bit. 2 may become 1, and 3 could become 2. But when you talk about the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Knicks, I feel like that's ultimately what the East is going to look like in your top 3 in some way, shape, or form, right? After that, I feel like everything's up for grabs because it's very interesting right now. The Pacers have skyrocketed. They're hot. The Bucks are sitting at 5. The Pistons are rounding out the top 6 in that last playoff spot. Miami is trying to beat down the door. The Magic, who a lot of people, including myself, had them as a playoff team, have been struggling, due to injuries of 2 of their big stars. They're right now in the play-in. Does this make the Bucks drastically better, or do you think where they are is kind of where they'll end up?
I think when it comes down to it, I feel as though Middleton's just struggling to move so much and produce consistently. So I think if you find somebody in that third spot that can legit get you 15 to 18 points per game while you have your big 2 really put in work, because once Dame and Giannis are on the same accord, it's 30 and 30. They're unstoppable. So I think you just need somebody from that third unit to really give them an opportunity to get going, give them like a 5-minute break, and I think that can really help. And one thing with Kuzma is he plays off the ball a little bit more than Chris. So I think that gives you a little bit.
We have the graphic, if we can bring that up again, of the potential starting lineup for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, looking at this lineup, knowing the competition in the Eastern Conference, what do you make of this in terms of how it will make the Bucks more competitive, whether offensively or defensively or both?
I think one thing that occurs is putting more shooters around Giannis. You know that one year when they did win the championship, he was loaded with shooters. So you got Brook Lopez, obviously, Damian Lillard, Kyle Kuzma. Jackson, he'll continue to develop, but you have guys like Gary Trent Jr. who can come off the bench. But I think when it comes down to your 5 defensively, it's going to shade Damian Lillard's, deficiencies a bit, but then also pick up for the lack of what, Giannis can do as well. So I think that helps.
Well, if you're just joining us, Kyle Kuzma is now a Milwaukee Buck and Chris Middleton joins the Washington Wizards. And although this trade, I guess you can say, was a surprise, it kind of came out of left field, it was nowhere near as shocking as what happened over the weekend, that Luka and AD were swapped. Yes, Luka is now a Los Angeles Laker and Anthony Davis is now a Dallas Maverick. This is kind of like when you time travel in a movie and someone tells you what's going to happen in the future and you're like, that's not about to happen. Well, yes, it happened. We have the video to prove it in case you don't believe us. He's throwing up the LA. I still can't believe it. He got off that plane. It looked like he was crying all the way there. If you listen to some of the sources out there, he was very upset, just bought a $15 million house. Apparently, it took him out of left field as well. Before I dive into how I feel about the fact that Luka did not know about this trade, which in itself is problematic if you ask me, What went wrong with the Dallas Mavericks and Luka? There's a lot of reports. It's his weight. It's his off the court activities, whatever that means. It's the Mavs didn't want to pay what was going to be a hefty paycheck for Luka when his contract was up. What do you think it was?
I really don't know. It all sounded so crazy to me. I don't know why you would try to trade Luka besides the one fact.
25 years old, by the way, everyone.
Yeah, and a 3-time All-NBA first team. And I think only reason why you would trade him is if you're worried about him not signing back. And from all the reports, it seems as though that would have never been the case.
Well, from Luka's own mouth, he said that wasn't the case.
Yeah, of course not. And I really do not know. I don't know. I think Luka's worth every penny. I think towards the future, you always need a playmaker that's like that on your court that can really dominate. When you look at IQ, I've heard from Nico, mouth himself saying that like with IQ, it's LeBron and then it's Luka. So, I'm still shocked. I really don't have an answer. Hopefully we get it on somebody's deathbed.
So I'm tapped in a little bit to Dallas Mavericks Twitter. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a thing, by the way. So I've been seeing that they're calling Nico the Ego. That's like that's his new nickname. Is Nico the Ego, which is crazy.
That's old. Nico, I'm reading. Nico's an uncommon thinker. He's a special man. I will say
clearly, this. Uncommon's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, but to say ego, man, that's my man. I can't do that. It has to be some rhyme to his reason. Obviously, I'll go 80-20 to call him crazy, but I'm going to give him 20% to be like, yo, he's still in there somewhere.
Well, look, when you look at most career points per game of all time, at the time of their trade, Luka is in some historic company. You have Oscar, Kareem, Wilt twice, and then there is Luka. He is the only picture there that's in 4K. So just put that into perspective, okay? It's the only picture that's not in Technicolor or black and white. I think the most shocking part of this trade, obviously trades happen in the NBA, we know this, and I'm sure you've seen some crazy ones. What was the craziest trade you've ever seen?
Craziest trade I ever seen.
Like whether it was while you were an active player or like after your career ended?
It wasn't. Well, I was on a team where with the Celtics in 2014-15, we traded like 22 people. You know what I mean? So we're sitting at a table at deadline, like waiting for our coach, Brad Stevens, to come in. So Brad is kind of like, when he walks in, he's like, y'all won't be practicing. So like, he gets up, and I remember Marcus Thornton being like, man, they getting folks up out of here, man. That's tough. And I just hear Tyler Zeller go, they saying you getting traded. He was like, who? You. And then like legit shows him a phone, and Brad was like, yeah, you got to come too. And like legit, like I thought that was the craziest.
What they say, Friday, how you get fired on your day off?
On your day off, and it's like, man, like shoot, I guess at least they told you before practice.
That brings up a really good point, right? Because I think that. Listen, if you make it to the NBA, you're part of the 1%.
Yes.
And when I say the 1%, I mean there are a lot of college athletes who never play professional. There are a lot of high school athletes who never get into the collegiate programs. Right. That is why the NBA is the best league in the world. It is the best of the best. But there are tiers. Yeah. There are tiers in the NBA. And when you talk about the top upper echelon, you are awarded certain privileges.
Of course.
You are awarded, certain wiggle room to do things that the guys below you can't. You can come to practice maybe a little late, although you shouldn't. Nobody's gonna tell LeBron, hey, you're late, go run some suicides. It's like, man, shut up. But when you talk about that upper echelon, you're supposed to, it's like an unwritten rule that one, if you request a trade, that the organization does everything in their power to send you to your destination that you prefer. And two, that if you are gonna get traded, a phone call is made like, hey, this hasn't worked out. Unfortunately, we're going to. The fact that Luka was not given a heads up and found out when the rest of us did, I think for me is the most disrespectful part of this whole situation.
No, absolutely. I think that is, very unprofessional, very disrespectful, especially everything he's done. I think whether you're trying to keep it, under wraps or not, the least you can do is just, give a heads up to a guy that's given so much to the organization. I think one thing that occurs to play devil's advocate, if it was this wild and it was this, like they didn't call him, they didn't do this and the other, I really want to know what the behind the scenes were really like and how fractured that relationship was. If they were just like, bro, I'll see you later. Because this is Luka Doncic.
Well, that is an interesting point because during Luka's press conference where he was introduced as a Laker, this is not a direct quote, but he said something along the lines like, I had a feeling this day would come. And that to me is like, okay, red flag.
Yeah, my point exactly.
What does that mean
yeah.
exactly? There had to be some level of contention, and the bubble eventually just burst.
Yeah.
Like it was like poke, and Luka, obviously the shock still hasn't set in. He looks like it's an outer body experience.
Yeah,
like,
it looked like
I don't know why I'm holding this jersey.
Yeah, he messed around and found out. Like, told him to do it, and they did it.
I feel like eventually we will discover the true reason.
Yeah.
But before we close out this conversation, and after the break, we'll bring in Brad Bakken to talk all things Warriors. LeBron, the rumor mill. Did he know? Did he not know? We know Lee GM. That's his nickname. What do you think? Where do you stand on the LeBron drama?
He definitely knew. I think Dame and CJ had this conversation back in the day, and they were like, "Man, there's no way your best player don't know what's going on. Your best player says yes."
Really? I don't know. Call me conspiracy theorist. Say like I'm giving someone the benefit of the doubt. This is the one time I don't think LeBron knew. That's how crazy this trade was.
I can somewhat see. I can absolutely somewhat see that. But I feel like the follow up to that is like, do we see LeBron out in 24 hours? If he didn't know, when that comes down to it, what do we see? But
I'm glad you brought up LeBron, because there is a team in the Western Conference that is calling all the All-Stars, and apparently LeBron is included. We will discuss who that team is, rather, when we come back, and Brad Bakken will be joining us. Welcome back to the show, and we have a full house here. Brad Bakken is now sitting in between Evan Turner and I, and we are going to talk about a team that Brad knows pretty well. Before the break, I teased that there's a team in the Western Conference that is calling every all-star possible to try to make a move. And if you guessed the Golden State Warriors, then you are correct, because it is reported, like I said, that Golden State is making a whole bunch of phone calls. And some of those phone calls could be to Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Paul George, which is actually very interesting, seeing how they could have had Paul George before he put on the 76ers jersey, but didn't make the move to go ahead and get him. Now, as we talk about the Golden State Warriors, they currently are sitting at the 10th seed in the Western Conference. So that is the last spot in the playoff standing. So they barely are cracking into the play-in. Brad, I mean, this is interesting, because obviously it would blow up the internet if LeBron, Steph, and KD all were on one team.
Ashley, you just scared me, because you said that they're putting out a lot of calls, and the first name you said was to Steph, and after Luka got after Luka got bounced, I was like, well, are they informing Steph?
You're right. I saw the Steph picture and I went
to Houston.
Yeah.
The Warriors are exactly what Curry told them not to do publicly. Like, Evan, you've been around the league for a long time, right? So, like, there's very few superstars that will be as quiet as Curry when things start going downhill. You've been a dynasty, and then all of a sudden you're scraping to get into the play-in. Most superstars are putting their gavel down and saying, look, I need help, make a move. And Steph's out there publicly telling Mike Dunleavy Jr., this was like a couple weeks ago, don't do anything desperate, don't compromise the future. Now what are they doing? They're getting desperate. They're calling everybody, because they realize what apparently the Mavericks didn't realize. When you have one of these like 5 or 6 guys,
generational player,
that you cannot replace, and Steph is still playing at an all-NBA level, you got to do everything you can to maximize the moment. It's something that the Warriors, I think, have lost sight of when Joe Lacob kind of tried to galaxy brain this thing and do the Spurs, where the Spurs got lucky and drafted Kawhi Leonard. It's very difficult under normal circumstances to try to have your cake and eat it too, where I'm going to develop for the future and not compromise draft picks or young assets, but also win now. You usually have to cash in and go for it now. The Warriors have been resistant to doing that. They made Brandon Pajemski one of the untouchables, which always makes me laugh. Kaminga's been untouchable.
As we know, there are no untouchables.
They refuse to move on. Well, I mean, look, Luka's not, but Brandon Pajemski is. It's just, it's crazy. So I think they've kind of realized, maybe a little too late, they didn't trade Wiseman when he still had value. They waited on all these things, and now they're up against the gun, and now they're trying to call everyone. So secretly, yes, I'm a Northern California guy. I'm hoping that KD makes his way back, because I do think that it's like him or Giannis, like a major piece. The Warriors are pretty far away.
Yeah.
They can't just make like a peripheral move like the Dennis Schroeder move and think they're going to get into contention. But there's a couple of players, KD being one of them, that I think could at least give them a fighting chance. So, yeah, I'm quietly hoping for a reunion.
I mean, Evan, we look at the standings right now. The Suns were once in playoff contention. They have now dropped out of the playoff contention. They're in play-in contention right now, right ahead of the Warriors at 9. Obviously, we still don't know what's happening with Jimmy Butler. That is the only team on his list, except you can't move Jimmy unless you move Bradley, and Bradley has something called a no-trade clause, so he doesn't go where he doesn't want to go. LeBron James was one of the names that was reported the Warriors were making phone calls to. The Lakers have said, yeah, we're not trading him. He's going to be a mentee, or a mentor rather, to Luka, so we can take him off the list, allegedly. Kevin Durant and Paul George are names that were also thrown around. But what's the realistic, how's this really going to end, though, in 24 hours?
Man, unfortunately, in my mind, I don't see the Warriors being able to make any moves, to be honest with you, unless you give up Kevin Durant, which is the only thing I really want to see, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant together. Because I truly believe, man, Steph really deserves this. The game deserves this. I don't like watching the playoffs or any postseason without a Steph Curry, but I think if you give him a little piece, he can make the most out of anything.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Jimmy, Golden State, it was reported that Golden State was interested in making a move for Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy flat out said, I'm not going to sign a long-term deal, so if I were you, I wouldn't make that move. Jimmy is hell-bent on Phoenix for some reason.
I know. Well, he is hell-bent on Phoenix, but here's the thing, and this is being floated right now, is the way this could work, structurally speaking, is Jimmy could end up in Phoenix and KD could end up in Golden State. And that's really the only way, because...
But does Jimmy want to go to Phoenix if KD's not there?
Well, that's going to be the question. At a certain point, are you just going to hand out whatever exactly a guy wants? Pat Riley has not given him what he wants to this point. And to your point, they've traditionally in the NBA, you do get your way. But dude, this second apron is changing.
Unless you're Luka.
But that's the evidence that it's changing. The second apron is changing everything. Teams are like trying to forecast 3 and 4 years out. And they made a mistake with Luka. Everybody knows that. But it is emblematic of the thinking of these front offices that we've got to get ahead of these monster salaries, because it's very difficult to win when you're that top heavy, as the Suns have found out. So there is a structure here where Jimmy replaces Kevin Durant. And from the Suns' perspective, because if it's 1-to-1 Warriors and Suns, I don't think the Warriors have enough. I don't think Kuminga and a couple draft picks is going to get him off Durant. But if you get another team in there and you start throwing those assets toward Miami, and then what Phoenix gets is Butler, you basically replace Durant with Butler, but maybe not as much money on the book. You can, in a weird way, Jimmy could be like a salary dump. You don't re-sign him. You kind of start tearing it down, because I think the Suns went way, way over their head. Like, they're way over their skis. And this is sort of an exit route. It really is. You go and you get Jimmy. Maybe he opts in for one more year next year. Maybe you sign and trade. But if not, your books start clearing. And if you look at the smart teams right now, the Spurs, the Knicks did it with a bunch of like smaller contracts that weren't long term. And then they struck when they had a chance at Karl Anthony Towns. The smart teams are forecasting ahead of how to clear their books. And I think Phoenix has got to start that process. So I think there is a way. Maybe I'm trying to manifest it, but I think there is a way that Jimmy actually replaces Durant in Phoenix.
I just feel like people got to play ball. You're hearing a lot of guys just like, well, I'll do this, but I won't do this. Or, shout out to brad Beal for the no trade clause, but it's like there's a lot of people tree hugging where you can't really make plays happen. So,
Evan, I want to ask you this, because I'm not in the presence of an actual NBA player.
What do you mean?
Well, where like
you're always hanging out with me.
Well, like on a set where sometimes I have some opinions that aren't the best about players, and then it's like I really want to know from a player, like, dude, it's so hard to connect to a guy like Jimmy Butler or what James Harden was doing in Philadelphia. I get that you sort of have to assert your leverage to some degree to get where you want, and you have earned that. Like, I do understand that to a degree, but he's tearing up other people's careers. He's tearing. The people on the Heat are trying to win. Guys are trying to make a name. They're trying to make a name for themselves for their next. He is just blowing up teams. He's being paid $48 million to play basketball right now, and it's like I just look around at the world and like how tough money is for people and like real life stuff like gas prices and stuff. And
eggs.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult to look at a guy like Jimmy Butler and say he's earned the right to hold a team hostage for 48. He's being paid $48 million to play basketball. He's never even won a title. Like I'm sorry, but he's not in like the prime Kobe stuff where I could do what I want. I'm curious what you think about that.
No, of course. I think one thing that occurs is give Jimmy his respect. He did, kind of lead that franchise in the past 4 or 5 years to feats that people did not expect.
For sure.
Where we call him playoff Jimmy.
Yes.
Where, people, he grew a little bit of aura about him that's at a high level.
Yep.
Granted, I wasn't in the offices behind the scenes where he's talking to the GMs or presidents or having these conversations where he may be feeling like he's entitled or owed to something from past conversations. But when it's coming out the trenches and doing it for your teammates and everything, like, no, a bigger part of it is like, all right, bro, eventually give it a trade, give it a deadline, and I'm going to come back and try to make sure I'm acting like I'm part of the group. Because like you say, man, it's about the team, it's about the group. And Jimmy's a professional, he's a competitor. And, like, I really believe he wants to win. It's just a lot of stuff getting tied up. And it's like, sometimes you got to understand when the leverage is over and just let go.
And you wonder if that deadline he's saying is the trade deadline.
Brad. We'll finish this conversation. We're going to finish this conversation after the break. And after the break, we're also going to play a little game of crazy trades. And you'll see what I mean. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. And as promised, we're going to play a little game of crazy trades. And we here have a list of players that we wish played together, just like Luka and LeBron will now do. We have Magic and Bird, LeBron and Steph, Bill and Wilt, Kobe and LeBron, KG and Dirk, Hakeem and David Robinson, and then we have Shaq and Dwight Howard. I don't know how that would have worked out because they would be scrapping in the locker room every other night. But guys, seeing these trades here, or manufactured trades, if you will, pairings, duos, whatever you want to call them, anybody who's not on that list that you would have loved to see play together if it was possible? Seeing how anything in the NBA apparently is possible.
It is now. It's a new world. It's like before and after Luka. It's a new
BLAL.
Yeah.
After Luka, before Luka.
Yeah.
I feel like we spoke about this last time I was here, but I would have loved to see a Michael Jordan, Grant Hill.
Interesting.
I've always been a big fan of Grant Hill. I think before he got hurt. And,
you probably patterned your game a little bit after Grant Hill.
Yeah. Before, I turned out to be how I was, but I was a big fan of him. But, Grant Hill was a 6'8", do-it-all playmaker. Yeah. He could guard. He could score at a high level. He's a triple-double threat realistically every single night, but I just thought he was a physically imposing individual that would have boded well with MJ.
I think Dirk and Kobe would have been amazing to watch.
Yeah, Kobe
together.
wasn't. I didn't see Kobe on that list, and he was kind of like a.
Yeah, we had. Kobe and LeBron were on the list.
He
together.
was a lone wolf, so it's difficult to pair him up with people. Him and Shaq were perfect. Yeah. But I
think even Dirk would have been a great pairing, though. They have very similar ideologies. I feel like they approach the game. They're like silent killers.
Crazy respect for each other. Yeah.
I was in my formative years, like in the Iverson era. Ooh. So I always think
that's my guy.
Who could Iverson? And Iverson and Kobe, they both. I don't know who would. They'd be room for the possessions. But Iverson and Kobe. But I also, when I was a kid and it was Reggie Miller and Patrick Ewing, the guys that were real rivals. And also when positions were more rigid, I would like Fox and Wemby right now.
Yeah.
This I know everything's become positionless and you get Luka and LeBron, they're basically the same player, but it's cool they're going to play together because everybody does everything now. Yeah. But back in the day when positions were more rigid, I think it would have been very cool for Kobe and Duncan, who were rivals, played different positions, could really complement each other within the structures of the way the game was played then. And if you went back further than that, I was thinking like Isaiah Thomas and Hakeem. if they had a chance to have an inside out combination, like instead of like Bill Laimbeer or whoever he was dealing with as his big man in Detroit to go against Jordan. And so and that's why I thought of Reggie and Patrick
I can tell you
Ewing.
right
I like
now,
the
there was
positional
obviously
complementary.
no social media in the 90s, but if the Knicks would have traded for Reggie Miller,
it would have been awesome.
It would have set the
Wild.
Madison Square Garden on fire.
Wild.
Like, it would have been Armageddon. It would have not
LeBron
been
kind of
good.
did it when they were big rivals. I mean, it wasn't quite what Reggie, but LeBron with the Heat was a big rival.
I think I could equate it more to like KD going to the Warriors.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because like the
That was
Warriors
huge.
had just booted
That was huge. That was
OKC, and like remember how like the world shut down with
3-1, then Russell Westbrook, the cupcake
yeah,
situation.
because when LeBron
and
left
all
to go to Miami, he was a free agent. So like he had the power was his, but like and KD was as well. But of all the teams you could have picked, like here go to them. That was
It messed
kind
up
of
basketball for a couple of years. It was
I'm-
fun, but it messed it up.
So
It literally messed up basketball
as
for a couple of
Warriors
years.
fan, when that happened, I remember.
multiverse,
I
for
can
sure.
honestly say, even though I knew, like that was the first time in a long time. It's like unless somebody gets hurt, these championships are over. They're definitely winning. I was like, I don't want this. It's too.
Really?
It's too much.
It was 4 top 15 players in their prime.
It's too much.
And then on top of it, Chef Curry, it took away from his legacy.
Yeah,
he didn't need him.
Yeah.
Like, and not in a disrespectful sense. It's like
Interesting.
even during
Also, it took away the fun of watching Curry a little bit.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he was more like Rip Hamilton running around and like when Curry had the ball,
Shout out to
it was
CBS's
like
own Rip Hamilton.
nightly theatrics,
Yeah, no.
and you have to give the ball to Kevin.
And shout out to Steph and Kevin for making it work. 'Cause
Yeah.
Steph moved over for a couple years and did everything so Kevin could.
He did.
Because Kevin was unbelievable. When you
He
sat
did.
there, it's like, bro, y'all both don't need each other. Y'all need to be going up
think-
against each other.
Do you
Isn't that
think
why
though
Kevin
that
ultimately
Kevin
left?
Do you think that Kevin Durant's legacy takes an unfair hit? Because if we look at kind of what actually happened, right? KD left to go to Golden State as a free agent. It's not like he requested a trade out of Oklahoma City. He spent many years there. It just ran its course, right? Yeah. You look at LeBron. LeBron essentially has done the same thing. He teamed up with D Wade. They brought Chris Bosh in. They didn't win the first time, but they ended up winning again. 2-peat, all that. We know the magic of that, right? Is it just because KD's less likable than LeBron that people give him a harder time? Because if you kind of look at it, if you take the team out of the equation, yes, the team's a big part of it. It's not like he forced his way out of Oklahoma.
Yeah. That's the only thing I'll say that people forget and get lost in the sauce. Remember, KD won MVP. He averaged 38 and 5. Broke his foot. I believe Steph came on, won MVP. KD was kind of publicly like, how did I lose my spot as the best player in the world? I just got hurt. Do all that, fast forward. They go head to head. Steph hits that 47-footer, 37-footer back in the day. Go head to head. Fast forward again. I believe OKC had the best team that year. They're up 3-1 on Steph Curry.
Agree.
No matter what, when it comes down to it, you are Kevin Durant, one of the best players to ever live. You're up 3-1 on Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and another team. Finish your breakfast. Regardless
So
of what,
that's when you talk about KD's legacy.
yeah,
that's what you
I
think
say.
about.
Like you ran to go join the people that beat you up, and you're a whole alpha. Finish your breakfast.
That's
3-1.
a very good point. So when LeBron and D, like when great players team up, then that's one thing. But to his point, when you go to the team that just beat you and a team that has already won 7, that is already that good. The team is that good. So if you go join another great player, so like when Kevin Durant went and joined Booker, that's 2 great players, but the Suns weren't anything. He went and joined a team that had proven we can be one of the best teams of all time without you. So
we just had a bad 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Let me
they got
play-
game 6 Clay. They got game 6 Clay.
And that's
So then
what
let
I'm
me
saying.
play devil's advocate here, right? He goes to Brooklyn and he teams up with Harden and Kyrie. We know how that situation worked out, right? Then he goes to Phoenix. He's teaming up with Devin Booker. Bradley Beal joins. We know how that situation's looking so far. Let's say, because anything can happen in the NBA apparently, let's say KD does go back to Golden State.
Into it.
Does that then hurt or help this legacy that is constantly under attack because of going to Golden State in the first place?
It'll definitely help. I wish he.
It helps because, but okay, let's just say, let's add another layer to this, right? Let's say Golden State goes to the finals, or let's say they go to the Western Conference Finals. Will then the argument always be that Kevin Durant always needed the Warriors to be like.
No, it's different times. It's literally different.
Okay.
That 73 and 19 really matters. Like when you're you play pickup, when you go there, bro, you start looking at people. If everybody over here is 6'3" and older, and then you're looking over there, everybody's 5'4" and shorter, and you're the best player in the world, you're bogus for going to the right.
Dude.
It's simple as
that. If you take the
like,
5 best players at lunchtime at elementary school and you played a chess team,
what if I'm just a good
GM?
GM? What if I'm just a good GM?
Well, the GM part's fine, but the player's the one that has the choice.
Right.
But I think to Evan's point, this one would be different because KD was like overkill back then. Now he would be the savior. Now it's the Warriors that need him.
Yeah.
And I think
interesting.
You know, and there's some humility in that like, mostly he's going to catch a bad rap from some of the keyboard warriors that are going to say he had to go back. But truth be told, the league is too talented now. There's too many good teams. There's too many good players.
Too many good young players.
Yes.
These young kids are so... Jason and Jalen are still 26.
Dude,
27,
you can't...
Like, catch them on any given night.
It doesn't... To just hold the candle to, like, did you win a championship? There's too much. And also... It's being proven that there's so much talent that you can't just go join other good players and think that you have a formality. It's not like when LeBron went to D. The league, even from only what that was 15 years ago, is so much better, so much more balanced now that you need a Kevin Durant. He's tried the best individual talents, the Hardens, the Irvings, the Bookers, bring in the Beal. But there was something about the unifying effect that Steph Curry brings to a team, the attention that he attracts off ball. KD has never gotten easier shots, and there's some humility in. It doesn't mean that I'm not a great player and I can't score on anybody. He obviously can. But there is something to saying Steph Curry, nobody, not Russell Westbrook, none of these guys have ever made my life as easy as Steph Curry. And I don't think that detracts from KD.
Yeah.
Steph Curry makes everybody's life easy.
And I think he always keeps the ship kind of balanced, because when you go to these other teams, like the Warriors are one of the best teams in history, one of like the most covered teams in history. And I think one thing that occurs is Steph keeps a balance in culture. Sometimes you look where KD is going in like Brooklyn. You see them go like to Phoenix, where it's like, yo, this organization is kind of out of muck.
Yeah.
Like this culture is kind of out of muck. There's like no real chance of even having a chance to win a championship because people are trying to break out or they're set tripping inside. You know what I mean?
There's so much stability with the Warriors.
You guys talk about culture and you talk about it being out of whack, and that brings us back to the Dallas Mavericks, because we have a story here that we want to get to before we close out this segment here. The Mavs are offering refunds for the rest of the season's home games for fans, who have canceled their season tickets following the trade of Luka to the Lakers. It's valued at $2,000 or around $2,000. This isn't great for culture. It's not great. I mean, you got fans protesting in front of the American Airlines Center. You got fans canceling their season tickets. I mean, look at this guy. He flew almost 8,000 miles, and Luka's not even there in Dallas.
Yeah, he should get a refund.
Like
He should get to play.
He should get a
refund.
Photos, you would think that Luka's no longer here.
Yeah,
It's bad. It's bad.
Only thing I'll say about the
AD,
ticket,
you will never replace Luka. That's not a warm welcome.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
AD's in a tough spot.
Yeah.
AD's in a tough spot.
If you're Anthony Davis and you're walking into the situation, you got signs like that. You got people canceling their season tickets because I didn't come here to see you. I came here to see Luka.
Yeah.
It's not a great Southern welcome.
No, it's not at all. But life's ills. We this whole hour we've been making talking about some of the downs of like billion-dollar dudes. So sometimes this is kind of like, hey man,
it's true.
Yeah, every now and then a bird might catch you and land on your hat. Like, you know what I mean? So call it that. But I love the Mavericks taking accountability, though.
Okay. Well, while I dissect that analogy, because I still don't know what it meant, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Triple Threat, and it is now time for In Your Bag, and that is when I pose a social question at a random time before the show starts, and we collect the best answers. And this week, it was all about the GM. Which GM is hated more in their city? Is it Nico Harrison Or is it Jerry Cross? So we have some answers and we're going to pull them up. Let's see what you guys were feeling. This one says, Nico just traded their franchise player. Jerry Cross didn't trade MJ, and at least they won 6. So I still have Evan Turner and Brad Bachkin in the studio with me. Do you guys agree or disagree? Yay or nay?
Man, I'm from Chicago, bro. Jerry Krause, I still can't stand you.
They booed his widow.
Now that was bogus. Now that was wrong. But like, shout out. But like, watching The Last Dance, I'm a super Bulls fan. Like, I still think of the what if. Seeing MJ ask what if breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Listen, you're talking about Michael Jordan and 6 championship Bulls, and if I don't know. I didn't grow up in Chicago, and I watched The Last Dance like everybody else. So
yes.
I don't know. But if it's true that Jerry Krause was trying to galaxy brain this thing, and the picture that they painted that players don't win, organizations win. No, Michael Jordan wins.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to sort of like bust that thing up and was sick of Jordan and Jackson and all those guys. If that's true, then he deserves more hate. But the freshest wound, Nico Harrison, and I came in and Evan said I used to live up the street from Nico Harrison, so I don't know what I can say, but Nico's in a bad place.
I want to pull up some of these other things. Save that thought for a second. Let's see what else. Let's see what people are leaning. Jerry Cross engineered 6 championships. Harrison 0. Good point. 6 does beat 0. What else do you got for me? Roll it out, roll it out, roll it out. Okay, say what you want, but Cross won 6 chips and he spared the 98 aging team from losing and not going out on top. Fragile Pippen, Dennis 37, MJ 35, etc. Nico just gave away the Mavs' future for a potential short-term gain. Imagine trading Dirk after the 2006 finals. Brad?
That's a good analogy. That would have been a tough deal. These are 2 different things because they haven't. That you could almost say that's the biggest reason to be mad at Nico is the team. I remember when I was young, I was a huge John Elway guy. Like he was just my guy, and they kept losing Super Bowls. And if somebody would have come to me and said, "Y'all can have Joe Montana and win a Super Bowl," at the expense of John Elway going to the night, I would have said,
Anthony
no, I want to lose.
Joe Montana
I want to lose with my guy. And I think that's part of it for these Dallas. Like they would have rather lost with Luka. They never gave it a chance to see if they could win with him. It's just so early in his career. I think it's just different.
I think also, and this is no knock to Anthony Davis, but it's not like you traded Luka for LeBron. Because then you could be like...
No, even LeBron's too old.
No, but even LeBron, you could be like...
Wemby, and that's it.
No,
you know
absolutely.
I mean?
But AD is
But you don't trade Luka for AD.
Yeah, but that's how good Luka is. Of course, but AD's still averaging 25, 30.
No, you don't. You don't. It was a terrible trade. But right now, they're still maybe a better team. AD's awesome.
No, they're not
right
a
now,
better team.
Regardless of which, let's just go back to the finals last year. No matter what, I believe Boston holds the key to the championship.
I agree.
It's not even close. Last year, they gave them 1 game. Gave them 1 game. Like, I talked to them. They're like, bro, we finna sweep these boys. It's not even gonna be close. Like, this is before the finals even started. So if you're comparing it from that, it's like, no, we'll never beat this team. We'll never ever beat.
So maybe Nico's thinking that we were in the finals. It looks close on paper, but we weren't close. And you can make a case that like the Blazers
that AD is going to get them even closer. Again,
they do. Whether you agree with that or not, but they do. He looked at it and he said more balance, more versatility.
And Kyrie's going to average 35. Let's just do that.
But last night, if you saw last night, game on the line, Kyrie. It's a 1-possession game, seconds dwindling down, doubled at the logo. Life without Luka is starting for Kyrie. He's always been at his best as the second guy. And now he's going to be getting all the double teams. That's, he's awesome. He's awesome.
I just have a hard time thinking when you talk long term that AD for Luka makes sense. It doesn't make sense. One is 30 years old.
It doesn't.
Or he's going to be 32, and Luka's 25 years old. It doesn't make sense.
There's not a single player you could trade for Luka right now other than Wemby. That would make sense. Not one player. Anthony Edwards, Tatum, none of them. No way.
Not Tatum?
No way. Tatum is a guy that's like some of your parts. There's no way individually Jason Tatum.
Somebody said Tatum's the closest thing we got to LeBron right now.
No way. Luka Luka.
Tatum's the closest thing we have. That's a different show.
In regards to dominance, like he's averaging.
What about,
he's
did we
averaging
forget
28,
SGA,
he's
guys?
getting
What about SGA? I didn't hear his name thrown in the mix.
SGA hooping like Jordan.
Oh man,
Let's talk about it.
if OKC came and said we'll
Listen.
trade you Luka for SGA,
While these
I would
two
talk.
continue
I
to
would
go
talk.
back and forth, while these two continue to go back
But
and forth
Nico
about
bumbled
it,
this. That's it.
That does it for this pre-NBA trade deadline show. We will be back tomorrow. Not this show, but we will be having so much coverage with these guys throughout the day tomorrow when we await for the other shoe to drop and the craziness that is the NBA trade deadline. If you missed any of today's show, you can catch it in full on YouTube. Until next week, for myself, Evan, and Brad, we'll see you then.